In this presentation, we will record a customer payment on account and then a deposit related to that customer payment. In other words, we had invoiced the customer in the past. We will record a receipt of the payment and then record the deposit of that payment. As we record the receipt of the payment, we'll see an example within the receipt payment where there are multiple invoices. We will then select the appropriate invoice within it. This will be done within QuickBooks Pro 2020, QuickBooks Desktop 2020. Here we are in our Get Great Guitars file. We currently have the Open Windows open. You can open the Open Windows by selecting the View dropdown and go into the Open Windows list. We'll be working down here in the Customers area. We'll be working with the Receive Payment. So in this Receive Payment, what we're going to say is that there has been an invoice in the past. This is going to be a standard type of Receive Payment, not a deposit. We got an invoice happened in the past. We will then record the Receive Payment. As we do so, we want to note that the record deposit on this side, that little 2 should be increasing to a 3 as we have another payment that will then be due. Then we'll go ahead and record the deposit. As we do so, we want to think about what's going to happen in terms of financial statement accounts as we go. The receive payment should be, you know, that this item here means that the accounts receivable will be going down and undeposited funds will be going up. And then the record deposit means that cash checking account will be going up, undeposited funds in this case going down being the other side. Let's take a look at the financial statements before we start here. We're going to go to the reports drop down. We're going to go to the company and financial. We'll then go to the balance sheet report. Balance sheet report, changing the dates up top in the custom report up top field, changing the dates from 01/01/20 to 12/31/20, January through December 2020. We're going to say OK. Here is our balance sheet. Once again, we would expect then for the first component, not the checking account, the undeposited funds to increase, and then the accounts receivable to be decreasing. More specifically, the customer related to accounts receivable will decrease the amount that they owe us, and that's going to be our customer music store stuff. Let's take a look at that report by going to the reports drop down, customers and receivables, and we want to take a look at the customer balance detail report. Customer balance detail within the music store stuff, we see that we have these 2 invoices outstanding. We're just going to be selecting one of them, decreasing, and we will be choosing the 816, then making a payment to match out to that invoice. Let's do that now by going to the Home tab in the Open Windows. We're then going to go to the Receive Payment. Receive Payment. And we're going to say that the payment's going to be received from Music Store Stuff. So we're going to say Music Stuff Store, Music Store Stuff, Music Stuff Store. And then we're going to pick the one we want. Now we could populate the amount. I like to go down here and just choose the invoice that we want, which is this one. Once we do that, it will populate the payment field for us. So I'll select that. I'm going to say that it was a check that we received. The date that we're going to get it on is the 21st of February, so that looks good. We'll then put the check number, which I'm going to say is 4562. 4562. That's not our check. Of course, that's the check number on the check that was given to us in the form of payment. Remember, what's this going to do? It's a customer payment. It's going to be increasing undeposited funds, decreasing the accounts receivable. Let's look at that now. We're going to say save and close. Then we'll go to our balance sheet and take a look at it. We see the undeposited funds here. Double clicking on that. We're going to scroll down. A lot of activity. We're in the 816. There's the 816.27. That's a payment. So we're going to open that up. And there is our customer payment. Closing this back out, the other side then going to accounts receivable, decreasing it. Here's accounts receivable, double clicking on it, scrolling to the bottom, there's the other side of our 816 for the payment, double clicking on it, we see then the customer payment. Closing this back out, then we want the supporting documentation for the accounts receivable saying who owes us that money. And we can find that on the customer balance detail. We're looking here at the music store stuff. We see now that the payment is here. We have this invoice now matched up to this payment. The only outstanding invoice being the 630. That then the outstanding balance for music stuff store. And the total is $1,424 for all of the accounts receivable, which of course should match what's on the balance sheet as we go back to the balance sheet in the open windows in the accounts receivable. Notice there's no effect on the profit and loss because we recorded the revenue when we recorded the invoice. Now we're going to do this again because that was good times, so we're going to do it another time. We're back in the home page, and once again, we were going to go to the receive payment. We have already entered the invoice. Now we're going to go to the receive payment. Before we do, let's just check out the customer balance detail report one more time. Customer balance detail. This is going to be Anderson. So notice Anderson's got a lot of activity here, and we have the invoice here. It's a little bit more interesting situation where we have the prepayment of the $250, then the invoice of the $525. That means that $250 of the $525 has been paid. There's still $275 outstanding. That's what we're going to get the receive payment for at this time. So there's a partially unpaid invoice still outstanding, which we have received a payment for. Let's go back to the home page then. Receive that payment. We're going to go ahead and receive payment. We want to pick the customer of Anderson Guitars. So we're going to type in Anderson. There is Anderson, and you can see here, here's the invoice of the $525. I'm going to select it and check this off. Notice what happens here. It doesn't pick up the full invoice because the amount due is only the $275. That's the amount due. That's the amount due in order to bring us down to zero. Once again, we could see that if we're confused about that, and we say, that's funny. Like, that's not what normally happens. We can go into the invoice. We can double click on the invoice and see how everything ties together. Here is the invoice. Here's the full amount of the $500. They owe us $525, but then we have this credit, the payment applied here. So we can see the payment that is applied. We can also see more detail if we see this little arrow up top. We could see more detail related to the particular customer here. So we got the invoice, the payment, and the open balance being the $275. Then I'm going to close this, and I'm going to close this back out. So that takes us back to our customer payment. So we're going to say that it is $275. The date is going to be the 26th. So I'm going to say plus to get to the 26th. I'm going to say that the check number is 5321 is the check number. And that looks good. What's going to happen when we record this? Once again, we know that the undeposited funds will go up. The accounts receivable will go down. The detail for Anderson Guitars, that particular customer that owes us money, will go down as we have now received the payment. Let's check that out. We're going to say save and close and take a look at that and see if that is indeed the case. We're going to go to the balance sheet. Within the balance sheet, we'll open up let's go to the undeposited funds first. Double clicking on the undeposited funds, scrolling down to the bottom. We see it's broken. Anderson Guitars, the $275. Double clicking on that, we get to our customer payment. Closing this back out. The other side in accounts receivable. Here's accounts receivable. If we double click on that, here's the detail. Here's the $275. That's the payment. Double clicking on the $275, we see once again our customer payment. Closing this back out. We can check out the detail related to accounts receivable, which is probably the most interesting part of this particular one. Go into the customer balance detail in the open windows. Anderson, you'll recall, had the $525 or the prepayment of the $250, the $525 being the invoice, and now they've completed the payment. So the story for Anderson Guitar, they came into our shop. They said, "Hey, I would like to purchase a guitar." We said, "Hey, we'll give you the guitar, but we don't have it on us right now. So we'll order it for you, or we'll get whatever we got to do to get it. If you give us a deposit to make it sure that it's worth our while, that you're committed to it." They gave us a $250 deposit on the $525 guitar, or $500 plus 25 sales tax guitar. Then later on, when we got the guitar, or we got it prepped for them, we said, okay, now we're going to charge the invoice of the $525 and possibly send them the guitar. And then they gave us the difference of the $275 that was still owed on the guitar, bringing their total balance at this point in time down to zero. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to record the deposit. If we go back to the balance sheet and consider what will be happening here, if we go to the balance sheet, we've got these undeposited funds, which represent multiple checks. and we're imagining at this point in time, if we have undeposited funds, we should have either cash or checks in our hands, on hand, that we then need to go to the bank and deposit into the bank, taking them out of undeposited funds into the bank, putting them into the bank. As we do so, we're considering how will the grouping of those undeposited funds be shown on the bank statement as we go to the bank. If we have just cash or something like that, or if we're grouping the checks together and we're going in and in depositing them as a lump sum, then it'll be grouped together as one lump sum. If we have multiple checks and we think that they're going to be on the bank statement in multiple different checks, then we want to make different deposits so that our deposits reflect what will be on the bank statement. If we're going to group them all together in some format, as we're going to assume here, therefore they're going to be shown on the bank statement as one lump sum, then we want to lump them together in one deposit to make the reconciliation process as easy as possible. To do that, we're going to go to the Home tab, back to the Home tab, Home page. We see that the number 4 shows up above the record deposit areas because there's 4 items in undeposited funds that we now need to deposit, which we are doing. We're taking those to the bank right now. We're going to select the record deposits. We have those 4 items. We're simply going to check them off. Check, 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 check. We're going to check those 4 items off. We're going to deposit them at the one time. These are, of course, happened with the payment screen. So they were increased with the payment screen. And we're going to say, okay, there's our 4 deposits. The total of them will be $1,641.27. That's the amount that we expect to see on the bank statement that we'll then reconcile from our books to. So we're going to say save, and so what's this going to do? Of course, it's going to increase the checking account, and it's going to decrease undeposited funds as is given by the account here within the from account. So we're going to say save and close and see if that is indeed what does happen. So we're going to go then to the balance sheet in the open windows. Within the balance sheet, let's check out the checking account. Check in the checking. We're going to go into the checking and check it out, and we're going to scroll back down. And we then have the deposit here on the 26th of the $1,641.27. Double clicking on that. That then takes us, of course, to the deposit. You'll note that closing this back out, it's in there as one lump sum of the $1,641. Let's take a look at the undeposited funds. Closing this back out here. Scrolling down to the undeposited funds, it's gone. Why? Because it went down to 0. But I want to look at the detail for it. Well, one way we could do that is we could go to the register. I like to go to the trial balance. So I'm going to go to the reports up top, go to the accounting and taxes, take a look at the trial balance. We're going to change the dates from 01/01/20 to 12/31/20. The trial balance gives us a nice quick look at everything, and you can see these 0 balances are still there because there was activity throughout the time period, even if it is currently at 0. Therefore, we can go to the undeposited fund, double click on it, see the activity within it, and we could check out these last 2 items, 3 items, or 4 items. Yeah, and you'll note that they put them in there not as a lump sum in undeposited funds, but as individual items so that we can then check out specifically the payment as compared to the deposit. But if we were to double click on any of those deposit items, we would see that they have been grouped together in one deposit totaling the $1,641.27. Closing this back out, you can review where we are at this point by taking a look at the trial balance. If anything is off, you can go back and take a look at it, which is a good practice to drill down on, check the dates, see if there's anything wrong there. If you want to push forward anyways, note that we have the backup files that you should be able to restore at any given point within the problem and just be able to push forward at that point with the current numbers that we have by using and restoring the backup files.